so-called feminists attacking people, trying to cause riots, trying to block French people voting for a woman. But they're the big feminists, actually trying to block the first female president of France in history. We are live on the Alex Jones Show. It is Monday, April 24th, and of course we're covering the aftermath of the absolutely monumental battle between nationalism and globalism in France with the election there. Marine Le Pen obviously squeaked through to the second round, but also Emmanuel Macron, the establishment candidate, is through to the second round, which is a big problem. He needed to be knocked out given the fact that all the big money is behind him. Again, the outgoing government is behind him. We've laid all that out. He is the quintessential establishment candidate. He is the new Tony Blair. And it looks like France, according to the polls at the moment, which of course were wrong before Brexit and Trump, but in this case, the gap is far wider. It looks like the French will vote for their own national suicide come May the 7th in a couple of weeks' time. Now, there's still 2 weeks to change that round, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that the nationalist populist revolution is over because Marine Le Pen looks set to lose this battle. Again, she did get through to the second round, but there you see an article out of Breitbart, which is a really good breakdown of this. Manchurian candidate Macron is France's Obama, and in that article, he breaks it down, the fact that he's a Rothschild banker. He was literally cultivated in all these elitist institutions. Delingpole writes, quote, "All France has done is to guarantee the election of a lame duck caretaker president, continuation Hollande." And Hollande has now endorsed him, by the way, as we predicted he would, who will ensure that France's ongoing decline will continue unabated. Its industries will stagnate. Its social unrest will intensify. Ever greater numbers of its citizenry will be murdered in homegrown terrorist attacks. Its economy will tank. The country that was once arguably the most civilized and beautiful and sophisticated in all the world will descend ever deeper into chaos, ugliness, and despair. And we've talked about it. I've talked about it. I went to France 2 years ago, 3 years ago, went to France 1 year ago. You can see the decline. You can see the migrants on the streets, the intimidation, women afraid to go outside. Of course, they've had 6 jihadist attacks in Paris alone in the last 3 years, and yet the French people seemingly will vote for the person who will continue all of that, offering no alternative whatsoever, offering no policies to address the chronic problem with youth unemployment, the chronic problem with jihadist terrorism, the chronic problem with a lack of integration when it comes to these Islamic ghetto areas. But none of that's a problem. The biggest problem is my tweet from yesterday, which you can flash up on the screen. Before the vote was happening, hours before, when Marine Le Pen supporters was going to the polls to vote for her, bearing in mind the only female candidate, or the only one with a chance at this point, she would have been the first female president of France in history. And yet, what did you have? So-called feminists, Antifa feminists, attacking people, trying to cause riots, trying to block French people voting for a woman. But they're the big feminists, actually trying to block the first female president of France in history. And a lot of people were very triggered by that tweet. You see it got like 8,600 retweets. It went around the Twitter echo chamber, which is basically what it is at this point, with these far leftists tweeting it out to virtue signal to each other, which is what they do every single time. Calling me out for criticizing so-called feminists who are actively trying to block people from voting for France's first female president. They responded in kind on Twitter, and if you go to my Twitter homepage, you can scroll through some of these responses. I'll read them out because these people need to be called out. So Luke Savage said, and these are all verified accounts, these are all prominent people in the media, in activism, all feminists. Luke Savage of CBC Canada, so-called feminists are protesting a fascist, so much for the tolerant left. Well, they're endorsing Islamofascism in protesting against Le Pen, the only candidate who has promised to address Islamofascism, which is creeping into France, Sharia law. And again, to the far left, a fascist is anyone who disagrees with them. So if you set the bar that low, then everyone is a fascist. Here's another response from Feminista Jones. Worst take about France's election so far. And then they link to the tweet that you just saw that I tweeted out yesterday. So again, they take your tweet, they quote it, and bounce it around their own echo chamber. They don't actually have a response. Oh no, they don't have an actual argument to respond to it, to debunk your points. They just bounce it around each other's virtue signaling echo chamber and think that's good enough. And when you call them out on Twitter, they have a mental breakdown, get PTSD, and in some cases threaten lawsuits and claim you're harassing them for disagreeing with them on Twitter. There you see that response, 5,100 retweets. Feminista Jones. Again, none of them have got an actual argument. Here's another one. This only goes to prove that feminists are not blind and vote for the best person regardless of gender. Really? It doesn't go to prove that they're literally voting for somebody in Macron who has promised to continue the policy of bringing into the country adherents of a belief system that literally treats women like cattle. Islamism. And the only candidate that is trying to reverse that, she's bad. The people who are protesting her, they're good. They're the real feminists, as they literally get behind a belief system that has something called Taharush Gamia, otherwise known as the rape game. A belief system that embraces honor killings, acid attacks, forced arranged marriage, female genital mutilation. The notion that it's acceptable to take women as slaves. That's the belief system they're defending. We've played the clips. The feminists at the anti-Trump march in Germany, chanting Allah Akbar. They're literally aligning with, making an alliance with the most anti-woman belief system on the planet ever. But I'm bad for tweeting out that it's silly for these feminists to protest against a woman who would be the first female president of France. Absolutely insane. That's what they're upset about. They're not upset about women being harassed, catcalled, physically assaulted on the streets. They're not upset about Cologne. They're not upset about what's happening in Sweden. They're upset about my tweet. And that tells you everything about how the far left is now making an alliance with Islamism.
In ancient times, man roamed the earth in a constant state of hunting or being hunted. Introducing Caveman, where cutting-edge science meets ancient super nutrients. Secure your bottle right now at InfoWarsStore.com.